Alrighty, we're going to get started here. Hopefully, as people file in, they will just pick it up where we're going. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our panel event today. We're extremely excited to dive into the future of quick service restaurant technology with you all. Specifically, this panel will focus on the future of work in the QSR industry. Arguably, the largest pain point in the QSR industry is employee turnover. QSR brands are losing a workforce and a half annually, more than any other job segment in the United States. Even with similar pay to other industries, QSR jobs are considered less desirable. So what does this mean for QSR brands? According to a study done by the Center for Hospitality Research at Cornell, it costs restaurants over $5,800 for a single frontline employee turnover. When you do the math, this means that a QSR with 100 frontline workers across its locations is losing an upwards of $880,000 per year. Today, we're excited to discuss some of the most innovative solutions designed to drive down these costs. According to David Portaladin, NPD Group Vice President, QSRs increasingly look to technology to solve the turnover problem, both technology to train and to automate. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the specific technologies that are changing the game. The first area of focus today is automation. It is clear that a balance of human capital and automation is the direction the QSR industry is headed. Technology serves to improve the quality of the human workday, not to replace the employee entirely. By automating dangerous, repetitive, and less interesting tasks, we can free up employees to do more of the things that they do enjoy. The three solution spaces identified on this slide are essential to keeping up with the industry trends. First are startups innovating in the continuous monitoring space. Computers and IoT sensors are quickly becoming the industry standard for monitoring freshness of produce and the cleanliness of dining and bathroom areas. Next, we're amazed by the leaps taken in kitchen robotics. From perfecting a single task to automating the assembly of a burger start to finish, robots in the kitchen such as WeTech Food now have multi-recipe capability. Finally, robots that clean the kitchen, bathrooms, and all surfaces enable QSRs to keep pace with the customer's cleanliness expectations that have been cemented by COVID-19. As we look into the future, it is clear that investment in automation will be key to retaining both employees and customers. The other key trend is investment in human capital to increase employee retention. The onboarding process for a majority of QSRs is ready for a complete overhaul. For years, all training occurred in the back of kitchen, tucked away into books and papers. Innovation is cutting down on the total cost of turnover as finding, hiring, training, and reskilling employees becomes a much simpler process. Productivity analytics startups provide QSRs with data-driven solutions to enable operational efficiency. Another way companies are investing in human capital is by building an adaptive workforce through upskilling and reskilling technologies. These solutions provide businesses with on-demand contextual learning, putting quick mobile training videos at the fingertips of staff exactly when and where they need it. Workers can then up and reskill in seconds, increasing efficiency and employee retention, thus decreasing costs. The final tech area that we would like to discuss today is the building of an on-demand workforce. Simply put, having the longest list of qualified employees reduces the likelihood of labor shortages. We're extremely excited to have Monica Plaza from Startup Winolo on our panel today, where she can share her expert insight into this topic. Now that everyone here has a view into the industry and the pain points that most urgently need solving, let's transition over to the highlight of our event, our panel discussion, hosted by moderator and brand and retail team leader, Will Decker. Will is going to facilitate a discussion between our expert panel of QSR and future of work industry experts. I'll let you take it from here. Thanks, Will.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. What a great way to set the stage. Hello, everyone there. Hope you enjoy my pre-pandemic photograph. But as Ryan said, I'm the head of the brand and retail program here at Plug and Play. We love having these sessions to bring together our various groups of startups, investors, and corporate partners to talk about these topics. And we've got a phenomenal group today. You can see their names and faces here on the screen share. John Featherston, he is the the Senior Director of New Ventures at Chick-fil-A, our champion and long-term partner here at Plug and Play. So very excited to have John Drew Martin joining us, former CIO of Jack in the Box, to share his perspective, among other things. And Monica, as Ryan mentioned, VP of Strategy at Winolo. So excellent. Maybe take a moment as each of you turn on your cameras and your microphones and maybe add a little bit of a more introduction on your experience or perspective today. Monica, did you want to start?
Sure, happy to. Hi, everybody. My name is Monica Plaza. I'm the VP of Strategy at Winolo. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Winolo, it's short for Work Now Locally. We're the leading technology platform aiming to disrupt the temporary staffing industry. We were founded in 2014, and since then have helped over 1 million workers connect with frontline hourly job opportunities through our mobile apps. So we're an app-based platform connecting workers with jobs in a very flexible, choice-driven way. So great to see you and excited for the panel.
Excellent. And then John, maybe you next.
Yeah, glad to. Delighted to be a part of Plug and Play. You guys are set the standard for excellence. Thanks, Will, for including us. And our new ventures team sort of exists to accelerate external innovation for Chick-fil-A. So we're grateful that our current times have resulted in our business thriving and growing faster than ever. And so there's more interest in speed to solve challenges. And so that's where we enter in. So we'll take business challenges, sort of reverse pitch them to the marketplace, source and vet solutions, and try and accelerate pilots, field tests of new technologies. And we're grateful to have scaled maybe a dozen or so technologies across the business that include cold supply chain monitoring. We sourced and developed the technology that got around 800 or so to date restaurants in delivery directly, not with third party, but our Chick-fil-A restaurants in delivery, and another around IoT monitoring of chilled environments within the restaurants. So those are just three examples of things that the business required, didn't have a natural solution for, and our network of accelerators and startups and our ability to pilot quickly is what delivered those results for the company.
That's incredible. Well, thank you, John. And next up, Drew Martin. Want to give an intro in your own words?
Yeah, thanks, Will. Great to see everyone this morning and to be with you. My name is Drew Martin, again, former CIO of Jack in the Box up until last May. And a true confession, when I got recruited into Jack in the Box about 6 years ago, the recruiter said it would be helpful if I had QSR experience. And I said, what does that mean? So there's hope for everybody to understand the industry. But I thought I was able to, having come from a high growth technology, AI, big data startup, kind of have some of those backgrounds, as well as come from a scale consumer organization like Sony as the CIO there. And then from PepsiCo before that, some experience with dealing with franchisees. So I was super excited to come in, I think, at the right time with all this digital transformation happening in the QSR space to kind of bring some things from other industries that had already been figured out and to figure out how to start to adapt them to the Jack model and to the industry. So happy to be with you. Thanks, Will.
Amazing. Thank you. All right. Well, Brian teed up a couple topics. One was around robotics and automation, another around the future of work and how that's shifting. And I think we just wanted to, again, set the stage with a question to the group around the guest experience and consumer behaviors when it comes to QSR and how those have shifted during the pandemic, what you've seen, any trends that you've picked up upon, and then what you think might last, what will persist post-pandemic. So who wants to take that first?
It's a good question. I don't know who, gosh, we're all still learning, boy, every day,
Yeah.
aren't we? In terms of what guest experience, how folks define it. I happen to be at went to a wine tasting event last night that is put on by a really fine dining restaurant. And the couple next to us talked about how they really have decided while they love the food, they love eating in their pajamas. And this was like their preferred, they plan to only occasionally come out, but they wanted to enjoy. So I don't know how many folks would continue making decisions like that, but I do think that technology and getting things right and anticipating my needs before I get there are going to continue to be reestablished with really high expectations. And so whether that's app, whether it's ordering procedures, whether it's payment, the whole concept of a frictionless guest experience long before, or possibly if they never arrive at your physical location, I think continues to be will be critical defining points of guest experience. It's a great question.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah, maybe just to build on that, I like to use examples like the one at the couple next to you last night. But for us at Jack in the Box, what was interesting, I think, is digital was very much an afterthought. And one example I'll call out was DoorDash. We started noticing a couple of years ago. A junior staff person said, "Hey, we should do something with DoorDash." And we said, "Not really a priority." And she said, "Well, actually, we're already doing a lot of business with DoorDash because their model at the time was just to send a dasher in who would order, at the restaurant. And we started to be able to track it just because they used a DoorDash credit card. And we said, okay, well, maybe I guess we have to do it because they're coming in as disguised as guests. And, but then we said, okay, our strategy is going to be table stakes only, just really, if we have to have an app, we'll have an app, but we don't really have expectations that that's going to be a significant part of the business. And clearly COVID has changed all our lives and really in some ways accelerated a lot of the things. And so fundamental shift for us was that digital went from something that was table stakes to, wow, if we don't get this right and we don't really jump on it, there's huge opportunity there, but there's also a tremendous amount of challenges. So it just really reoriented the way management and we all work together. Kind of some of the digital things had just been a marketing thing, but suddenly to do it at scale, you needed marketing and technology and ops all kind of working together. And that really changed a lot of the model, how we approach work. I don't know if Monica has some add on that.
Yeah, happy to. And obviously, I'm not going to be speaking to the consumer trends, but I can absolutely speak to the worker trends that we've seen.
There, yeah, right.
Absolutely. And absolutely, there's been some trends that we've seen that I do believe are lasting. I think the biggest one we've seen is that hourly workers have more choice and power than ever before. And that's really driven by the situation that we found ourselves in the past almost 2 years. And they've been seeking out flexible work opportunities, started out of necessity, but really, I think the best way to describe it, and we've heard people talk about the Great Resignation, but what I like the phrase that I've heard that I think resonates more is the Great Reassessment. And workers in a lot of ways have spent this time we all have, I think everyone on this call has figured out things that matter to them and what matters in their lives and kind of what they desire. And what we've seen throughout the pandemic is that workers just don't desire the 9 to 5, 40-hour work week anymore, not just out of their obligations and necessities, but just that's not where they gravitate anymore. And that's something that I believe is here to stay and that we need to address in every industry with hourly workers or any workers and in QSR specifically. It's not a temporary shift perspective. It's really sort of that reassessment of needs and desires and that we need to address.
Yeah. Hey, Monica, just one thing that you just triggered a thought, which is we also talked about is with the advent of digital, suddenly, the crew worker taking the order suddenly is also the de facto help desk.
Exactly.
It used to just be they're going to order and we're going to fill the order. And that was the job. Now it's, hey, can you help me out with the app? I'm having trouble logging in, or why don't I get my loyalty points and all this? And that's a whole different set of skills and training that needs to be. And from the guest perspective, they don't really care. They don't want to call a help desk when they're in the restaurant or in the drive-through explaining how digital is not working for them. So I think in addition to everything you said, it creates a whole new set of skills and dynamics and processes that employees have to handle that maybe they haven't been able to or up to in the past.
Absolutely.
I would say an observation. It's interesting, Drew, too, hearing your thoughts about apps and what was table stakes. Obviously Chick-fil-A, we feel super fortunate that we did dedicate time to an app a long time ago. And I think it's interesting because as I have folks, whenever people might give me feedback about their experience in a Chick-fil-A restaurant, I think that the technology allows the people that our guests interact with to even get more credit. So if the technology works, like you feel better about the 1 or 2 people or 3 or 4, or however many it is that you might interact with. And if it's not working, then you're sort of predisposed to kind of be a little bit irritated, a little frustrated. And so, you know what I mean? So like, I don't know about y'all, but a first sentence of a conversation with someone, if it sort of begins with a positive tone or with a complaining tone, it sort of can set the stage for the whole guest experience. And so technology that's working well, I think increases the likelihood you'll say, oh, that was a nice person, or I can't believe that jerk couldn't solve my problem. You know, I mean, it sort of go both directions, has the potential to, depending upon whether technology helps the team member accomplish their purpose.
Well, then let's dive into that technology and the team member. In Silicon Valley, certainly in our bubble here, there's some sayings around the pandemic driving 5 years of innovation into 5 months, particularly around digital. And we talked about the future of work and the behavior changes. I love that great reassessment, right? So is there a place for technology, right? We think in Silicon Valley, technology is the solution to almost every problem, but what is the role of technology in helping the team member set that positive tone, or helping the team member adapt to the type of expectations they have around their future of work? What's some interesting technology innovation? What role does it play?
You guys probably saw Sweetgreen's announcement of their acquisition of Spice this morning. Is it Spice in Boston, I think? So, you know, they're just a 2-location bowl restaurant, and they had I've been there a couple of years ago. It's a sort of robotic conveyor system that is suited to bowls and some of the things that the ingredients of bowls that are, you've got different hold times and different ways that they're assembled for each guest. So to me, it's an interesting intersection of what's considered to be a premium brand with premium ingredients and technology that maybe could allow them to have much more, labor efficiency. You know, right now it's kind of got a little bit of a cool factor. At some point in time, if that becomes standard, then it won't be cool anymore. It'll just be what a bowl place has. But the speed of Spice and the number of things it can handle at one time, it's not a technology that's suited for a Chick-fil-A restaurant, but it's suited for more of a bowl and salad concept. So it's an interesting, I think, in the moment example of how do you help team members be more effective. I would say that in general, just in our case, I think brands probably at some level have a choice to make between, will technology replace team members or replace labor that's hard to find? Or in some cases, might technology help the team members that, admittedly for me, more of what I'm looking for Chick-fil-A is technology to put in the hands of great team members. We're not at the moment looking for things necessarily that replace team members. With that said, we have opened a juicing facility in California for lemons because it's a repetitive task in the restaurant. So it's an interesting way that it's a task that's repetitive, not that fun, happening in every restaurant. And we didn't automate it in the restaurant, we automated it more centrally, and we'll be using high pressure pasteurization to get that fresh squeezed juice to restaurants to make lemonade. So I think there's restaurant level things, there's potentially supply chain level automation that also will impact the frontline restaurant serving guests.
I'll maybe throw in 2 additional examples to that good one. The person I think in the restaurant I empathize most with is the drive-through order taker. You know, they have to take an order and also bag a different order while they're taking that order, something I could not do, being not good at multitasking. And as we talked about, they have to be friendly while they're juggling these tasks and do it very quickly. And then, to my other point, they're now also being asked questions about why doesn't the app work, or where's, I ordered ahead, that kind of thing. And in addition to all that, some of them, to Monica's point, are reassessing. So that's an extremely important and challenging job. So like at Jack in the Box, we said, how could we make that easier, to the point, John, about, really taking great team members and making them more effective. There's different things like voice ordering, in a way we could do that with Jack, and we've played around with that, as well as A cool example a vendor told us about, a partner told us about, is reading tire pressure monitors from a car.
Mm.
You know, that's a signal that can uniquely identify a car. And can you use that in a, you know, within all the privacy regulations in a way to queue up what's the likely order of that car, assuming they haven't changed tires with another car. So that's one example. A second example is just around monitoring energy use in a restaurant. You know, in addition to all these things we're asking crew members to do, we all, you know, franchise owners especially care about profitability. They want to know if someone left a refrigerator door opened or didn't turn off the HVAC or set the thermostat right. There's solutions that can kind of monitor that energy usage so that you find out about it right away to take corrective action, and not at the end of the month when your P&L got hit by surprise charges there. So I think there's you know, I'm in the same camp that, you know, we want to take the team members and, you know, make them more effective and take away those, to the point earlier about those repetitive tasks that either they can't get to or aren't enjoyable, so they don't reassess their time in that restaurant.
I don't have a ton to add, but the one thing I would say is that, you know, one of the industries that we serve is warehousing, and that's obvious. So we're very familiar with this conversation of, you know, where automation is going to go. For many years, that's been, you know, top of mind in warehousing, and we've seen exactly what these gentlemen just said. Is it's really been a lot about making the human capital more effective versus completely replacing. I think even when there has been ambitions to replace certain tasks, at the end of the day, it seems to be going in the direction of combining forces to make workers more effective.
I'm intrigued. I wonder what you guys have seen. You know, there's a number of technologies that are advanced about digital ordering once you get to a restaurant location. So you get there and you push a touch screen, or the intent is for it to be intuitive. I think they keep getting better, but my own guest experience is that it could reflect my undeveloped intuition, but it's sometimes not as intuitive as I might like. Now, the interesting dynamic is if I can give you something as a restaurateur that's in your hand and your phone's familiar to you and you've got a little bit more confidence, then it doesn't, I think it potentially, I don't know, I'm thinking now a little bit about the psychology of where I'm in charge versus the technology's in charge and I'm confused. And so I think that I would say I'm observing that folks seem to be more comfortable with something that's right here that they understand, can see, can get the kinks out, or maybe ask questions about. If it's a fixed thing in the restaurant, a few of them, even though they're new, they almost look like sort of like the Jetsons to me, like people walk past it and it's almost obsolete already, because folks haven't warmed to it. Folks haven't thought, well, I'm already here, so why don't I use the technology? So I get that I think it's a labor saving device, but I'm not sure it's a customer satisfaction accelerator.
John, I actually love that you brought that up, just because, and if we can put a finer point on it, I think you're referring to kiosks.
Yeah,
you know,
well,
and,
right.
And it was interesting, especially at Jack, where we had those 10, 15 years ago and found out that they were actually not labor saving, because a lot of times, you know, some folks weren't comfortable with it, and you know, they brought the manager out, but the hammer to it, but also asking the manager, can you come help me? So you have this, you know, critical role, like a manager has to come out and walk them through it. And then obviously with COVID, I think McDonald's had made a huge bet on kiosks among other brands, but suddenly dine-in wasn't such a thing. And when it was open, and when they open, they'll probably, you know, there's an additional psychological question around, you know, touching another device that someone else just touched. And now you have additional labor to sterilize it per McDonald's latest operating procedure on kiosk. But the other psychological piece on that I think you're touching on, and we've all gotten comfortable now, I think, ordering through QR codes on our phone. But one of the psychological things is you feel pressured when you're in a drive-through or on a queue in a restaurant, you know, because you want to be respectful to people behind you. So you're just going to go with the quickest order that you can. And especially at a place like Jack in the Box, where there's a very broad menu, you know, if you're sitting at a table, you can take the time to kind of peruse the menu and maybe get some add-ons that you're not sure about, but you can read about them and, you know, explore a little bit more. So I think your point is great on the psychology of the guest being able to be in a comfortable spot to order more, and you increase the average order size, and you don't have the labor at the counter. And then you also, you're not really missing, in my mind, any labor savings from kiosk, in just one person's opinion, but I'm glad you brought that up.
Fantastic. Now we've talked about digital within the guest experience in the restaurant. We've talked a little bit about robotics and automation. I'm wondering, Monica, from you too, innovation, technology investment can also be digital and enablers for the team members in other ways. So are there any technology innovations for workers that you see early indicators for allowing them to work the way they want to in the future?
Well, I mean, that's a nice tee up, nice softball question for where the answer is. I mean, apps like ours are really, I think, that's exactly what we're aiming to do. So, I mean, I mentioned flexibility and choice being sort of an emerging trend, and it's always been there. Everyone's always wanted flexibility and choice, but now we've hit this point where they recognize they can have it or are demanding it, and things have to change along with those desires. But so Winolo, that's exactly what we do. We think about labor in terms of, instead of thinking about, full-time employment and one person leaves, you have to scramble to fill that full-time role. We think about it as a pool of ready to work workers that are enabled and ready to be able to show up on that particular job or another particular job or another location of that same QSR. And so the way we handle things with Winolo is, we streamline and use technology to streamline onboarding and make sure we have all the right certifications, like GMP, good manufacturing practices, serve safe, food badge, et cetera. And we basically take a lot of the things that are unscalable with the traditional model, and we leverage technology to just make that part of the labor process scalable. And not just for those who are bringing in workers to serve their customers or to work in the back of house, but also for the workers themselves. We're a very worker-centric model where, we talked about the design. We just talked about design. That is a big part of it. What makes it easy and quick and flexible to use? If it's hard to use and hard, no matter how innovative it is, they're going to download, they're going to take it off their phone, and they're going to go back to the old way of doing things. So that's really our approach, and we're seeing it really meet the need and the desires right now.
Fantastic. Then I think some context then for a couple trends we've noticed too. One is the graying, the aging of the workforce, right? So is this helping, I guess, recruit new talent? Is helping solve some of the domain knowledge, et cetera? And then retention. I talked a little bit about retaining folks. So once they're in the process, once the workers are there in the system, what is it doing to create, more sticky and solve some retention, decrease turnover for the workforce? So any applications, use cases, or insights there?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak. I'll speak first to the graying of America, if that's all right, just because we have some data on that that's interesting. We see that the baby boomer population has sort of been largely overlooked historically in as a labor pool for this category of job. And what we've actually found is super interesting, and that in our data, when that age group is using our app to find jobs, they're actually taking more jobs in a given week than the more traditional, millennial aged workers. On average, a third of baby boomers on our app, as we've categorized them, are doing more than 3 gigs per week, as compared to about 1 in 5 completing more than 3 gigs. So there's something there about enablement of maybe that category is not traditionally going to go to accept full-time work, but maybe where this allows them to pick up jobs and kind of fill in the gaps of their in their income needs or their time.
Yeah, just on the flexibility piece, I think it's really amazing how far we've come. When I just 5 short years ago at Jack in the Box, if you were hired there, first couple days, and I know ChickfilA is a very different model, but the first couple days you would just be sat in a back room to go through computer-based training and stay out of the way and work through that. And obviously now I think as everybody's adopting that phone-based, dynamic, engaging the content you need it at the time you need it type of model. So that's such a better employee experience, and I'm sure it's just going to get better. And the other one that we didn't necessarily talk about is the staffing. You know, the model, the staff assignments for the week were printed and put on the wall. You know, so
Right.
if somebody had an issue, you know, like happens all the time, they had to call in first to find out when their shift was, if they could get a different one, if they could trade with someone. So Jack, we put in, you know, software that everyone has on their phones, and based on their training certifications, they can swap shifts, you know, with another qualified crew member. And you can set it up for the manager to at least be aware or approve it. But it gives a whole lot more flexibility. The one other area I think, you know, from an employee retention is that some of the best restaurants really create a family team environment, you know, and create a place of connection for employees. So technology can also make people feel connected as part of that team, even when they're not on their shift, and you do gamification and rewards and incentives, and you know, really create a team environment. And like other things, technology can facilitate that. So I think we're just scratching the surface. And again, amazing how much we've come in 5 years, but lots more to be done. And especially with all the challenges with people reassessing whether they want to work at a certain restaurant.
Yeah, Drew, I think you touch on something that's become really critical for Chick-fil-A operators. And that is, if you just look at your schedule and think what would be optimal for you, which is whatever, 10 people from, you know, 6 to 11 and 20 people from 11 to 4, or whatever. If you look at your labor model monolithically, then you're in time travel to 1954 probably. I mean, it's just not, people are not living their lives that way. So you've got to anticipate, as a leader of a restaurant, versatility. You've got to anticipate people's schedules changing fast. It isn't just people getting sick necessarily. People's lives are not maybe totally as predictable. They're not willing for them to be. So I think that one of the ways you keep good people, you can either say, well, if I could just get them 8 hours a day, you know, Monday through Thursday, that'd be great. Well, what if you can get them 3 hours in the morning on Monday, 3 hours in the afternoon Tuesday? I have no idea. It could be childcare, it could be some physical therapy, whatever their life circumstances are. If you plan flexibility, then you get a different kind of loyalty from your team member who sees you working around the complexities of their life, instead of thinking, well, that's not easier for me, or that's not as good for my business. So I do think that it's an interesting, the reminder of the spectrum really of what might be great team member benefits might be pretty different if you're 17 or 27 or 77. And so a versatile set of benefits is pretty important versus here's what you get. I do think that we're kind of on the leading edge, and often the place we in the quick service restaurant industry, I think we got to keep staying innovative about what helps people live their lives, and whether it's healthcare, you know, some sort of planning for the future, tuition assistance. What if tuition assistance isn't necessary? How could that go to something else in people's lives? So I think staying versatile and being aware of what people really view as benefits continues to be critical to satisfying folks.
Love
And
that. Oh, go ahead, Monica.
I was just going to say, you're speaking my language here. I'm taking the words right out of my mouth, and I think that's exactly right. And I was just going to add that, you know, we found in a lot of the work we do, we're a tech company, so we're a very data-driven company, and we've seen directionally that, of course, things like wages sort of at the you know, important in the hierarchy of needs, but we are seeing more and more that we already talked about flexibility and choice are sort of gaining ground in terms of where everyone's value set is. But we touched on earlier, just treatment and respect and work environment and the family cultural piece of things is very important. We have some directional data that we worked with last year that showed that while wage is critically important, and that's, like I said, foundational in the hierarchy of needs, we saw that it becomes less and less critical when we use ratings historically, but when the job environment is very popular or people just love being there for one reason or another, whether it's super organized or it's the peer set that they get to work alongside, or the respect that they're feeling there, or the skills that they're developing, whatever it may be, wage becomes a little bit less and less important or top of the list when all those other things are there. So benefits, the culture, all the things that were just mentioned, they show in the data as well.
I think too, we can't hardly be on this topic without talking about robotics. And I think it's got interesting implications. I've been out and seen a number of the different things that we've probably all seen, burger cookers and fry station robotics, things like that are more naturally the case. I think that they're probably cool initially, but for a guest who thinks, I hate that 4 people lost their job because of the robot, I think that there's sort of one angle there. And if you're a team member and you think, well, they got one robot now, and they're coming for that robot's coming for my job, I may not totally put all the WD-40 in that robot. Maybe,
unless that robot's going to clean the bathroom, and then I might be.
Well, there you
okay
go. Maybe
that.
if that could happen, that'd be good. Shut the door, let all that, automatic sanitizing in the bathroom. I'd keep that one going. But I think that wherever automation requires the guest to accept lower quality, or that it intrudes upon career opportunities for team members, I think those present interesting. It's not dissimilar from, at some point, some of the moral implications of AI and where we might go. It's not as big picture, it's not like, philosophy across the culture, but I think it's about how does it make people feel? If you got real people doing real work, do you feel supported by the robotics? Or if you're a guest, do you feel like your experience is enhanced, or it's more consistent, or, higher level of quality? Or are you being asked to sort of eat a dumbed down sandwich because it was made by a robot? So there are those kinds of things. Depends upon where the brand is. If a brand is more in a commodity type deliverable, I think you do. And there's plenty of places for that. But if a brand is around tailored experiences, then these are more critical probably to consider.
Of that. Well, we've covered a lot of ground. We've gone from robotics and what that means in the industry to feelings of families and popular environments and flexibility, to other parts of the guest experience and attracting new segments of the workforce and retaining them. So if I were to step back as more of a general question, if I were a startup today and my aim was to become a partner with an industry player, where do I start? Where do I focus? Where do I try to innovate? Any thoughts or advice?
We hadn't talked about supply chain, but of course that's a massive challenge right now. Everybody's, if you're didn't have any other school plans, maybe going to truck driver school would be, you're going to be able to find a job. The logistics and supply chain, I think, are big. And from my way of thinking is that somebody's going to figure out breakthroughs where you can translate the kind of technological expertise that goes into a 1 million square foot warehouse for FedEx or Amazon and bring it to a 4,000 foot box. That you've got some version of last in, first out in your cooler, in your dry goods. And so I think it's too easy to default to either cooking or serving guests in the restaurant context. I think that there's real quantum leaps that could occur on supply chain. I think it could be some version of last mile as people get really good at last mile. Like for instance, we're looking at autonomous vehicles possibly to do delivery. And when people think, oh, to a guest, no, not necessarily. We might be looking at, they're massive warehouses where all the tractor trailers are, and they might bring stuff to a smaller, more last mile in the middle of 15 Chick-fil-A restaurants. And then maybe we have some goods that come from that smaller place through autonomous vehicles to the Chick-fil-A restaurants. So I think that I hear some, but I think there's sort of people flock to robotic cooking, ordering, and I think there's massive opportunity in supply chain, distribution, logistics, back of house logistics at the restaurant level and at the distribution center level.
Yeah, I think as we talk about this, you can be a kid in the candy store. There's so many opportunities from the guests all the way back to the suppliers. But one thing I would say in general, advice to any partner I always gave, you have some partners that come in and they've got a solution looking for a problem, and they're all about that. And then I think it's a lot better to start the relationship with, what problems are you trying to solve? Are you trying to solve last mile costs and delivery? And second part is, in addition to what problems are you trying to solve, like, what's your brand about? What is the culture of the brand, and can you work in a way that fits in with the brand values and the culture of the company and align around the top tier problems, and then come with solutions after that. I think that's generally more effective than, hey, look, I've got this great solution if you have a problem that looks like.
Amen, Drew. I hear that all the time. People come to me with solutions. That's super. You just got to find the right problem. I mean, that's startups are a solution looking for a problem.
Yeah. All I would add to that is obsess over the user, and that's exactly what you're saying. I mean, to be successful in any space with any new solution or disruptive technology, it's yes, you have to think ahead, but you have to think ahead with the problems that you're trying to solve, like these gentlemen said, and obsess over the user and what they need, not the cool thing that I want to build, which is
I would
it's
say
an easy
too, Will,
fallacy.
that some of other broad categories that are clearly problems, if folks versus saying, hey, I've got a solution. I think that right now restaurants have been in survival mode for the last year and a half. I think we'll turn the corner and be back to looking at sustainability challenges, especially around packaging. And nobody has had really radical breakthroughs in packaging, especially, compostable foam alternatives, because the coatings you put on there to protect yourself from heat or to maintain quality of a product or not to have oil leak, come through. They really take away the compostability and sustainability attributes. So somebody's going to crack the code on some of these sustainability and compostability issues. And when you think about hundreds of millions of wrappers and cups, it has huge potential. The other, I think, too, is energy resilience. And so we're piloting some energy resilience in a couple of restaurants in places like Texas and California, where there's rolling blackouts, rolling brownouts, and whoops, bummer. How long are we without power? And so could be a couple of days. And if we end up being the only restaurant in a trade area with power and operating, then that's got interesting opportunities. So those are a couple of other areas that I would say are very clear problems that I see a few solutions beginning, but way more could be welcomed. And so really back to compostability and sustainability, the massive packaging companies, I mean, they're dedicating lots of resources to it, but I see incremental gains, not transformational gains. And I think that's where it's right for entrepreneurs with new IP and new solutions.
Fantastic. Hopefully more to come around that. Absolutely. And circular models, consuming and making things closer to the consumer. I think that a lot of great effort there. Thank you for those spaces. It's fascinating. Circling back to our future of work and our workforce, I am curious. We've talked a lot about the benefits of having, a popular working environment for your operators, for retaining, attracting talent, giving flexibility. I'm curious just how you would manage. Let's say you're successful in doing that and migrating to a more flexible schedule. How do you then manage the uncertainty? And is there more efficiencies that you potentially gain or cost savings as an operator if you move to more of a flexible, technology or gig-driven model?
Yeah, one area not directly familiar to me, but I know is well publicized is Starbucks. Really leveraging a lot of AI to personalize at the store level. What is the demand pattern going to look like that day, that hour at that store? And then, plugging that into their labor model. So once you have the sourcing side on the labor flexible, then the more you can be precise and granular on the demand pattern, at that restaurant that day of the week. And certainly Starbucks has that kind of, peak moments during the day when they really need to ramp up. So the more, leveraging AI to kind of take advantage of that flexibility that you've built up on the staffing side, I think is an area that, they've pioneered and just makes a lot of sense. It's a big opportunity for everybody who's got demand patterns that are kind of fluctuate during the day parts and again, by region and store.
And I can speak to the question how to manage unpredictability of the workforce. I mean, I think that's what these more flexible models are really meant to do, right? So, you think about traditionally, someone calls in sick, someone no shows, whatever it may be, the options for what to do, or maybe the order volume is higher than you anticipated, and it's 6 hours before the shift or whatever, all of that. The options were limited, and I think with sort of the model that we use and the gig model is built for unpredictability. It's built for flexibility, not just on the worker side, but on the customer side. So I mentioned earlier this idea of a ready to work pool of workers. So instead of thinking about a shift or the pool of workers as being a sort of, consistency is key, and everyone 5 days a week, been there for a long time, they're very ramped up and educated on the job. That's not the way of the future. 150% turnover we mentioned earlier. Instead, what if you had a higher volume of workers, which is exactly how we work, who have been on your site or have the right certifications or are ready to work, and it's 6 hours before the shift. In our model, that's not a problem. We can backfill easily and quickly, automatically, without anyone having to go and cross out on the sheet on the wall. It's really more all app driven and automated. And so it's really just being open to a new way of thinking about consistency and readiness. Does it really have to be a 40-hour work week with the same set of people, or is there a different way of thinking about a ready to work population? And so that's really how we think about it. It opens the possibilities of what you can do. And then the other thing I just quickly add about unpredictability and retention and solving this problem, I also think there's an opportunity to be more creative about who we go after and what kind of workers we bring in. I think benefits was mentioned. If we're more creative and more thoughtful about parents and the challenges there, and when it comes to benefits or flexibility, that's already immediately more attractive to that category of worker. We actually have consider talent pools like the formerly incarcerated. We have a program called Path Forward that allows, the traditional background check. It's become pretty standard. It's pretty rote. We don't really think much about it in a lot of industries, and it's really closing out a huge population of workers who really could be excellent workers for any given industry. And rethinking that is something that also I believe we could more companies can take on.
Well said.
Fantastic. Thank you. Very insightful. And besides turnover, we've talked about employee turnover. We've talked about employees, team members handling lots of new different jobs, having flexibility. Are there other large pain points that we've missed or that are present in the QSR staffing industry or some emerging trends that you're exploring to solve some of those pain points?
Well, public health, what QSR was hoping to add public health to their strategic, corporate challenges to address. And so for us having locations now, and I might get it right, 47, 48 states and a lot of municipalities, there's a whole lot of different interpretations of what is a safe work environment at the moment. And so I think what I hope will last is that we won't just, we have to be super flexible, whether it's what the current requirements are for a restaurant in New York versus one in South Carolina or Texas or Florida. And so, you have standards that themselves have to be adapted pretty quickly, modified, flexibility. But I think that, I think what's vital to not go away is to maybe reestablish, rethink, have a new, not a new normal, but a next normal. I don't really love the term new normal because it sort of feels like going backwards. I like next normal. And so where we really think about the safety of team members. And I don't just mean like that the lock works on the back door. I mean, what is a safe working environment? What kind of conditioning of the space needs to occur? How do you need to be able to be confident with your children about whether your coworkers are sick or not sick? I mean, I don't have the answers, but I think that QSR, we talk about, there've been a lot of heroes certainly in the last couple of years, but people who keep serving folks and having customer interaction have a certain amount of guts, in my view, and sort of tenacity. And maybe they're scrappy because, you know, life requires them to work, so they don't get to opt out and work from home. So how do we affirm for them as their employers that we're thinking about them being safe? They don't have to just think about it themselves. So I'm saying I don't know exactly what all the answers are, but I think that's got to characterize the way we spend money, the way we think about designing a space, you know, work processes, all of that.
Yeah, great points. And maybe just building on that, one problem area that I think is also potentially an opportunity is the fate of the dining room. You know, I think and in a franchise model, it's kind of a question where, you know, a lot of franchisees, even if COVID goes away tomorrow, are going to wonder about, you know, the incremental benefit of opening up a dining room, especially in Jack in the Box, which even before COVID, we were 70% drive-through, and you know, another percentage of you know, third-party delivery. So the question is, do you open the dining room, and if you're building a new restaurant, do you build a dining room? And then what does that mean for staffing? Is there a way to kind of make that more self-service, like we talked about with QR codes and those type of things? So the dining room is both a big challenge. Certainly as a brand, you want as much sales and as much ways for the guests to come in and enjoy the product as you can. But from a franchisee, you have a question about whether or not, you know, to open up that dining room. And then the second thing that we haven't talked about, but is huge, is I think the statistic is there was 100,000 pop restaurants and bars that closed in 2020.
Yeah.
I mean, and so there's still a lot of people, I think, on the sideline in terms of labor participation, due maybe in part to either concerns around COVID or some of the relief programs that are in place. But there's a, you know, 100,000 worth of you know, restaurants and bars of employees that haven't maybe come back into the workforce, as well as, you know, 100,000 worth of guests that are not being fed through QSR. That could be an opportunity. So, and what does that mean in terms of ghost kitchens and ways to fill that in quickly? I think it's both a problem and an opportunity.
Great point.
Amazing. Monica, I see you nodding. I think maybe at this point is a great opportunity to share some of our closing thoughts. And, you know, feel free to riff on it on your own. If there's anything you felt like you wanted to add, didn't get a chance to, or your option to answer, what makes you optimistic? What makes you optimistic about the future of the QSR industry? Who wants to go first?
I'll start since I didn't answer the last question. I'm gonna broaden it about what makes me optimistic in general about on the worker side, on the hourly worker side. And I think conversations like this is what makes me optimistic. I mean, hearing what you all said about what you're thinking about and what you believe matters makes me optimistic. And I think what I've been seeing is, or what we've been seeing is this, it's sort of, not to be dramatic, but a bit of a revolution of the hourly worker. We've seen this over the past decade with lots of, you know, disenfranchised categories or different groups that feel, you know, that have kind of tried to regain power or recognize, you know, think about what they deserve. That's where the great reassessment comes in. And it's amazing to hear the receptivity of, yeah, on both sides. Yeah, that something's got to change. Things are changing. Dynamics are changing. Consumer interests, worker interests, company interests are changing. And it makes me optimistic that conversations like this happen, because we're all trying to solve the problems you mentioned earlier. What problem are we trying to solve? We're all trying to solve the problems that are out there and make everybody successful across the board. And so knowing that that's really where many people's, you know, interests are and focus is, makes me highly optimistic. And I think, you know, businesses like ours that are innovating on the tech side, the employers, you know, innovating on how they think differently about their workforce, makes me think that we're moving in the right direction.
That's great. Yeah, I'll add with two quotes to be philosophical. One, just I think with the digital transformation, I'll use a Churchill quote. He said, you know, this isn't the end. It's not the beginning of the end. I think it perhaps could be the end of the beginning. I think we really just started down this path. And again, some of that's from my coming from other industries. But I think there's still a tremendous amount of work to be done. And then the second quote is, they say that the big don't eat the small. small, but the
Slow.
fast eat the slow. So I think, the challenge about that opportunity is not to try to do everything overnight, but to be nimble, to be agile with not only your workforce, but what digital innovations you pick up and which you pursue and which ones you don't. And I think, the winners in the industry will be the ones who are able to be really nimble and get that flexibility and really adapt themselves to the changing consumer environment. So those are two things that make me excited about it.
Yeah, gosh, I love those quotes. Those are great. Listen, folks have to eat. That makes me very optimistic. And so I think a fair amount about, for me personally, maybe it's a little bit philosophical as well. I'm in charge of whether or not I'm trustworthy. But whether or not you trust me is a dynamic relational aspect. So I might be trustworthy, but if we are not working together, you don't know if you trust me. So there's every brand has got sort of a promise or a trust that you either establish or you break. And so it's on the brand to be trustworthy, and then hopefully invite the guest or the team member to trust you as an employer, trust you as a as a merchant. I'm exhilarated by the different business models that are out there, whether it's third-party delivery, ghost kitchens, grocery stores getting into prepared food even more aggressively. We all have been hearing that Amazon was obviously going to take over, ghost kitchens, just like they have bought Whole Foods, but Kroger's still in business. So is Walmart, Markets, and Wegmans, and Safeway, Albertsons, Fresh Market. There's still other grocery stores. So folks have to eat. Technology is going to advance. I think nutrition and health, we're going to keep making advancements. I see the potential for sort of quick serve nutrition that'll be beyond smoothies, different kind of supplements. So folks have to eat. Our lives are increasingly complicated, and QSR right now, I spoke at fast casual event a couple of years ago. And the fast casual folks a little bit like, well, our food, we're elevated, elegant. I'm like, okay, well, if what you mean is what you like is low volumes and you don't have a window on the side and you serve alcohol, great. If you'd like to have a better business model, add a window or make your food more accessible. So whatever a restaurant and fast casual and QSR, they're going to keep morphing as well. And I think that there's a time for convenience that means speed. There's also a time for convenience that means predictability. There's a time for convenience that means dependability about nutritional aspects and ingredients. So I appreciate the question, Will. Admittedly, I'm never not going to be optimistic.
I love that.
Despite these challenging times, QSRs are serving folks, and for volumes to be going up, it means we're figuring out how to employ people. We're figuring out how to serve people what they want or need, and it's in a complicated time where you don't want to be close to a lot of people. There's a lot of people doing hard work that's really honorable work, serving people food that they feel good about, and it fits their life circumstances that happen to include, pretty crazy pandemic right now. So
certainly does. Well, thank you for those closing words, John, Drew, and Monica. I think we're about out of time. That was fantastic. So I do want to thank you. You were incredible panelists, very engaging, very insightful. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, feel free to share any information at this point. From all of us at Plug and Play, thank you to the team here to making this possible. If you want to go to our website, plugandplaytechcenter.com. This webinar is part of many series of webinars across the topics from our programs. If you're a corporation that would like to get involved, reach out to us. If you're a startup, get in touch with us. And thank you again. This has been a phenomenal conversation around the future of work and all things related to quick service restaurants. Have a great rest of your day.
thank you. See you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.